Hey there guys, in this video I'm just going to be going over some Sig Stone Allocation, kind of like ways to think about it, kind of like with the rank up stuff, right, where it's like, I don't want to just do just a tier list, I want it to be how I think about it and like how to ways to change the way you think about how you're giving your champions the resources, because for like 5 stars right now, let's say you can get so many Sig Stones. I literally have 300, 400 5-star Sig Stone crystals unopened and probably near 100 generic 5-star Sig Stones. Those are super easy, but 6-star Sig Stones right now are the rarest or second most rare resource in the game, and a lot of champions really need max Sig or high Sig, or you're chasing prestige, and so you need Sig 200 on like 5 champions, and half those champions you'll never even play. If even half. Before in the game it used to be like all 5 champions were trash for prestige. Now at least there's some good ones. So there's kind of the few main ways to break down how you're going to be looking at why you're giving your champion the Sig Stones. You have a champion that is going to help your prestige. You have a champion that requires max Sig to be used. You have a champion that needs high Sig to be used. You have champions that need a few Sig Stones to get use out of, but they're pretty good at like a really low Sig. And then you have the champs with like perfect scaling, which have, you're like Hercules or something, right? Like each level is important. They have high prestige, high damage. They're a good champion. The Sig helps them. Every single level is really important for the champion. But there's not like too many of those. That's why you have to be able to like prioritize who's going to get it. So for prestige, you have to look at it in like one of 2 ways for prestige. Is it a short-term or a long-term prestige play? Long-term prestige plays are, Silver Surfer, and your short-term prestige play might be something a little bit lower down, but you don't have Silver Surfer, you don't have Hercules, and so you need to use some Sig Stones to get a prestige champion, and you have like the 7th highest cosmic prestige. Are you going to give them the Sig Stones? It'll help you in the short term, but what if in the next like 2 months, what if in the next month you double pull Surfer back to back? Now you wish you didn't have that. That happened to me. I made a short-term gain, but then I duped a champion that has higher long-term gain for me in my prestige. And I regret that right now because it's basically holding me back in my prestige a little bit, but it's fine because it helps me in my alliance in the short term. Will it really help me or my alliance? The way averages kind of work, if like I have a couple champions at like max Sig and some really high prestige champions, but I also have like 2 champions in my prestige that have just tragic prestige right now. If not 3, if I'm being, 3. So my prestige is held back by these 3 champions, where if I increase those, well, if I pulled Surfer, it wouldn't increase my prestige as much as just getting all those lower ones off completely, or a higher Sig, because 2 of them are actually decent prestige champions. Are they top in their class? When you're looking at prestige, the king is number 1. There is no second place when it comes to prestige, right? It's all about the highest prestige. But not everyone needs that. Do they actually have a helpful Sig? Are you going to get use out of them? Someone like Doom, Hercules, right? You're looking at them, you're like, oh, they're a prestige play, but Dr. Doom and Hercules are also 2 of the best champions in the game right now. Is it a top prestige with high Sig or low Sig? So there's a couple champions in this game that with really low Sig have super high prestige, and some have like no prestige until 200. So now at max Sig, champions that you need at max Sig, if they're not at max Sig, they're just not going to work properly. Your best example is usually like Captain America Infinity War. If you're using him for like armor break, let's say, to like armor break Emma Frost, it doesn't matter if you're like one parry behind, right? You're like high Sig, every other parry, you're going to get an armor break. But now let's say you're doing like Biohazard, and you need to shrug off every single bleed. You need 206. It's just how it is. Champions that aren't worth it unless it's max. A champion that's just like, without it being max Sig, this champion is just literally neutered. Or they just like missing massive utilities. Not great scaling throughout. I don't know why I put that there. That might have been a typo. High Sig. So the higher the better, but it's not needed to be max. Like in my opinion, a champion like Void doesn't require max Sig, because the ability to convert it into Fear of the Void is more important usually than just the actual base damage buff that you're getting. But of course, max Sig Void is going to be stronger than a Sig 1 Void by an extraordinary amount of difference. But if you're trying to reverse healing, it doesn't matter. If you get extra Fury, it matters that you're able to do it. So high Sig is better. For some champions, you don't always need it to be max for some. Opens a new part of the kit, but it becomes a lot more potent at higher levels. Again, Void. Void's just a great example for this category, in my opinion. Right? It gives him the ability to get Fear of the Void, allows him to reverse power gain and healing, and reduce evade chance by a massive amount, reduce their crit and stuff by a ton, right? But it doesn't require it to be at Sig 200. Has a specific spot where it's not really needed after. There is one specific champion that like instantly comes to mind for me. It's Kingpin. He has 5 different Sig spots that you want him at. Outside of that, it doesn't matter too much. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's like 0, because he doesn't need the dupe. 0, I want to say like 20, 65, and then like 200. It's like it's like all or nothing with Kingpin. And then cheese, something like Ronin. If your champion requires Sig to cheese out fights, and that's what it's used for. Low Sig, your one and done type champions, right? You're looking at like Nick Fury, just getting his Sig, all he needs, 1 Sig Stone, nothing else. Majority of the scaling happens within the first 1 to 50. You're looking at like Hyperion here, right? Where it's like you get the scaling, like Sig 1 is massive for Hyperion. But then there's a big jump actually for Hyperion within Sig 1 through like 17, I think, or something. But then after that, it scales an extra like 3%. But within the first 20 Sigs for Hyperion, it scales like 7%. So it scales more in the first 20 than in the next 180 for someone like Hyperion. The ability to do it is much more important than how strong that ability actually is. So there's not like... There's some champions like that, right? Again, with like Void, the ability to have Fear of the Void is more important sometimes than the Fury. You want the Fury that you get with it, the damage boost rate, to be as high as you can. You want Fear of the Void's duration to be as long as you can. But you don't always need it at its peak for it. Or a champion like Torch. Having a dupe on Torch is really great for Abyss in Act 6 or something like, or Act 7, something like that, where you can just revive and get it back. The ability to get it back is more important than the chance. Because even at Sig 200, it's still a chance, and it requires a couple fights either way to get it back. But where the ability to just get it back, period, is a lot. And then perfect scaling, I could honestly just change this to just like perfect, but doesn't matter too much. So by perfect, I just mean like, as I said, like Hercules, you know, someone like Ghost even. Ghost not so much for the prestige. Hercules is like perfect. You want as many Sig levels as you can for the immortality to last longer and the power gain to be better. And then he also has high prestige, so you want it maxed out. It's a strong Sig, so you want it maxed out. Someone like Ghost doesn't give you prestige, but you want her maxed out because of her power gain, but every single Sig Stone, you feel her power gain get better and better. But even at low Sigs, it's still really nice to have, and it just helps out a lot. So yeah, that's kind of where like the perfect scaling comes in. It's like especially champions that are just like perfect overall, that have like great prestige and great Sig ability, and you want it high level as well. Right, like for prestige, you might rank up like Thor Ragnarok, but you're not really going to use Thor Ragnarok. So now, I just wanted to give some examples for this, so I just put them on a quick little tier list maker thing. So now these are not necessarily the perfect examples for these. So prestige, right, like Silver Surfer and Namor. Namor, you need him at max Sig to use him, but a lot of people have kind of moved away from using him, so he's kind of a prestige champion with the added benefit of being super strong, and his Sig ability is very good, but you need it maxed out. So he's a great champion that has great prestige, right? Silver Surfer, underrated champion, but you're not going to tell someone to rank up and Awaken and Sig 200 Silver Surfer to go clear content. You're telling them to do that to join a better alliance and to get better alliance quest rewards. Same for Doom. Doom's Sig has more uses than people think and than people give it credit for, but you're not throwing an Awakening gem into Doom usually for like the use of his Sig. It's more for the prestige. Max Sig, we already went over Captain America Infinity War. Max Sig for me is something where it has a flat value increasing, right? Guardian. You want those resistances as high as you can, because that's why you're using him. You're getting extra resist. Mojo, he has the ability to now carry over his haters or followers, whatever it is, through the fights, which is really big for him as a champion. But because how much of his damage comes from the fury that he gets, you want it as high of a level as you can, so that way it scales. And as I said with high sig, like Void. Void's a great one to have at high sig, but it's not required for him to be max. I don't know why I quite put Captain Marvel movie there. I guess just because, like, the having it really high sig really helps her. Aegon, again. You don't need to have him maxed out. Having him just high sig is more than enough for most things because of the way percentages work out. Like, carrying over, like, 50% of your combo isn't that much worse than, like, 75%. Low sig, right, Nick Fury, as I mentioned. Hyperion, as I already also did mention. You know, you want like Hyperion with a couple Sig Stones in him, but you don't need to like invest 200 like for Surfer, or you don't need to invest pretty high like Captain Marvel or something. Archangel, again, the more Sigs you put in Archangel, the better he gets. He just gets better and better and better, right? You get more ability accuracy reduction, it takes less to turn off 100%, stuff like that. Perfect. Now the perfect scalers, I didn't put just prestige champions in there, or champions that like have duality of prestige and use. So Hercules, as I already gone over, just beast of a champion. You want him max sig. He increases your prestige no matter what, basically, and he's a monster in the game. Ghost, not going to help your prestige, but really good sig. And I threw Kitty Pryde in there because at sig 1, you're getting the ability to take no damage from anything. Which, I was talking to someone, they're like, oh, she already takes reduced damage while phasing, but, like, if you take a special 3, it doesn't matter, like, how much damage you're reducing sometimes. If their special 3 just hits way too hard in something like Abyss, you're kind of dead either way. And then the ability to gain the extra power, the more SIGs you have, the better, right? Like, that's kind of what she was bursted onto the scene for, is the cheesing ability of doing that. And same with the reapplying the incinerates. So having a much higher sig on her really helps. But having sig 1 is also really, really helpful, because you also still have the ability to reapply your incinerates and take no damage. So that's kind of what I mean by like a champion that scales. Having her at high sig is busted, but having her at sig 1 is a lot more busted than having her at sig 0. So that's kind of where I just wanted to show some examples of that. And I'll bring it back over here to end off the video. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it made some sense. I hope it helps you think about the resource management, which resource management is a massive thing in this game, if you couldn't tell by now. Yeah, it's a big thing in this game. It's important to understand why you're giving someone the SIGs. If you just want to give them SIGs, you can, but like, understanding why you're trying to give it to them is important sometimes, rather than just like who you're giving it to. You can give it to a bad champion if you have a good reason. People used to give SIGs to terrible champions for prestige because all the prestige kings used to be stuff like Thor Ragnarok before his buff, Phoenix, and stuff like that. Also, speaking of prestige, just one last time before I wrap up the video, look into low SIG prestige on Aunt May, because there's some champions that are bad prestige at the top end at 200, but are really good for like progressing players to put a couple SIGs into early on, get your prestige over 13,000 or something, and then you can focus on your Namors, your Silver Surfers, and stuff. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it helped out some people. Have a good one. Hope you guys have a good day. Bye.